Mars mission Showstopper. Why humans are at risk from dying if they go to Mars. It's a real problem. Phys.org has a special on this, and this is also by Sebastian Ketley on Express UK. Mars mission and why humans are at risk of dying from going to Mars, because it's a real problem. A manned mission to Mars will be an incredibly dangerous and complicated journey. Some scientists fear it could be lethal for the astronauts, according to the European Space Agency, what ESA has recently said. Astronauts traveling to Mars will face a wide manner of dangers, but the deadliest of them all could be space radiation. Every single second, charged particles traveling at near the speed of light will hurl themselves through the vacuum of space. Now on Earth, the planet's atmosphere and magnetic field protect us from all this harmful space radiation that punch through our bodies, but in space, where radiation levels can be 700 times higher than what we get on Earth, there is nothing to protect the astronauts. On the International Space Station, for example, astronauts report seeing flashes of light even when their eyes are closed, particles passing through their heads at increasing speeds. Can you imagine? You've got your eyes closed and you can see flashes of light of you. There's something wrong with that. Astronauts on the ISS are exposed to about 200 times more radiation than on an airplane pilot. Now we saw that from space weather, sometimes we do report how much radiation we have, as opposed to being, for example, at sea level, where that level would be 1. Whereas if you're, for example, at a height of about 60,000 feet, 30,000 feet, you get 40 times more than what you are on sea level. And then when you're at the International Space Station, it's about 250 times more than sea level. And when you're traveling to the Moon and Mars, it's 700 times more. So you can imagine. Now the bad news for future Mars-bound missions is a single trip to the red planet takes between a huge amount of time, 7 and 8 months. And all this prolonged exposure to space radiation can be toxic, lethal, deadly for anyone hoping to settle Mars in the near future, because they are talking about colonies on Mars and even the Moon. Marco Durant, a physicist who studied cosmic radiation on Earth, said, "One day in space is equivalent to the radiation received on Earth for a whole year." The threat of cosmic radiation is typically associated with an increased likelihood of cancer. The damage caused by space radiation targets the brain, the heart, and the nerves, the central nervous system. So in the long run, the European Space Agency warns that this sets the stage for degenerative diseases. According to ESA, a higher percentage of early onset cataracts have been reported in astronauts. There you go. That's the beginning of it. When ISS Commander Scott Kelly returned to Earth after spending a year in orbit, NASA studied his body for signs of damage, and they compared the results to his twin brother, Mark Kelly. NASA's so-called twin study found Commander Kelly suffered DNA damage as a result of his exposure to cosmic radiation. Unfortunately, there are still many unknowns about the exact effects of space radiation on the human body. Dr. Durant said, "The real problem is the large uncertainty surrounding all these risks." He says, "We don't understand space radiation very well, and the long-lasting effects are unknown. Measures taken by the ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter show a 6-month trip to the red planet would result in a 60% of the total radiation limit meant for an astronaut's entire career." So what does this mean for the future of humans on Mars and exploration of Mars and trips to Mars? Durante said, "As it stands today, we can't go to Mars due to radiation. It would be impossible to meet acceptable dose limits." Now the facts about the planet Mars. The first is Mars is the 4th planet from the Sun. It sits about 142 million miles from the star. Number 2, much like Earth, Mars has its own companions. It's got its moons, Phobos and Deimos. Number 3, a single day on Mars lasts a total of about 24 hours and 37 minutes. And number 4, the red planet Mars orbits the Sun at an average speed of 14.5 miles per second. And 5, gravity on Mars is only 0.37 F that of Earth's. Now, radiation, according to phys.org, radiation is in the space station's spotlight every day. A console at NASA's Mission Control in Houston, Texas is constantly showing space weather information. If a burst of space radiation is detected, teams on Earth can abort a spacewalk, for example, instruct astronauts to move to more shielded areas, and even change the altitude of the station to minimize the impact. One of the main recommendations of the topical team is to develop a risk model with the radiation dose limits for crews traveling beyond the International Space Station. ESA's flight surgeon and radiologist Ulrich Straub believes that the model should provide information on the risks that could cause cancer and non-cancer health issues for astronauts going to the Moon and Mars, in agreement with all space agencies. Now, recent data from ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter showed that on a 6-month journey to the red planet, astronauts could be exposed to at least 60% of the total radiation dose limit recommended for their entire career. And Marco reminds us, saying, as it stands today, we can't go to Mars due to radiation. It would be impossible to meet acceptable dose limits. ESA has teamed up with 5 particle accelerators in Europe that can recreate cosmic radiation by shooting atomic particles to speeds approaching the speed of light. Researchers have been bombarding biological cells and materials with radiation to understand how to best protect astronauts. Marco says the research is paying off. Lithium is standing out as a promising material for shielding in planetary missions. ESA has been measuring the radiation dose on the International Space Station for 7 years with passive radiation detectors in the DOSIS 3D experiment. ESA astronauts Andreas Mogensen and Thomas Bestke wore a new mobile dosimeter during their missions that gave them a real-time snapshot of their exposure. The same European team behind this research will provide radiation detectors to monitor the skin and organ doses of the 2 Phantom traveling to the Moon on board NASA's Orion spacecraft. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.